In light of Ollie Watkins' rather sizable transfer to Aston Villa, worth a reported £28 million upfront and a potential £33 million subject to add-ons, long-term subscriber and friend of HITC Sevens Dan suggested to me on Twitter the idea of taking a look at some of the loftiest sell-on fees of all time. Watkins' deal, for example, will pocket Exeter City somewhere between £4.2 and £4.95 million, which is an enormous amount of money for the club, but doesn't come close to troubling the 7 largest sell-on fees of all time. Before I start, I should point out that there isn't some big resource out there that just lists all the biggest sell-on fees that have ever occurred in a nice, easy format which I could just go and look at. Sell-on clauses, and subsequently sell-on fees, can be quite convoluted arrangements. Sometimes based upon a percentage of the overall future fee, and sometimes based upon a percentage of the profit, sell-on clauses can be bought out or reduced by the buying club. They are liable to change subject to add-ons, and you have to try and find actual reputable sources in order to find figures you can really trust. So I have done my best to find the 7 largest, of which I can find fairly solid evidence, but it's extremely plausible that I could have missed 1 or even 2, and if you think that's the case, do obviously let me know about it in the comments. Without further ado then, here are 7 of the highest sell-on fees in the history of the beautiful game. Virgil van Dijk, £7.75 million. We start this 7 with a defensive titan and a man who Celtic fans long knew was destined for greatness. It took Virgil van Dijk a fair old while to reach the greatness of Premier League and Champions League titles, but he's certainly there now, aged 29. The authoritative and commanding Dutchman joined Celtic from Groningen for just £2.6 million in 2013, and he immediately became the standout defender in the Scottish Premiership. Following 2 seasons bullying centre-forwards north of the border, Van Dijk joined Southampton, a common route into the Premier League for Celtic players at the time. The transfer set a record for a sale made by a Scottish club at over £13 million, but Celtic was shrewd enough to still insert a sell-on clause. There is some dispute about the size of that clause, believed to be between 10 and 15% of the profit that Southampton made on the sale, rather than the overall fee. Since Southampton sold Van Dijk for an enormous £75 million fee to Liverpool, Celtic profited from the transfer to the tune of somewhere between £6.2 and £9.3 million. Unable to identify any official accounts, I decided to just split it straight down the middle, which works out as £7.75 million, and means Van Dijk sees off the sell-on fees of the likes of John Stones, Michael Keane, and compatriot Frankie de Jong to kickstart this 7. Harry Maguire, £9.5 million. There's a fairly noticeable step up from the £7.75 million sell-on fee in the case of Virgil van Dijk, and the £9.5 million sell-on fee for Harry Maguire, and even if Van Dijk's sell-on clause were 15%, he still wouldn't finish above Harry Maguire in this 7. Having won the Sheffield United Player of the Year award 3 seasons in a row as a youngster, Harry Maguire joined Hull City in 2014, not long after featuring for the Blades against the Tigers at Wembley in a 5-3 thriller in the FA Cup semi-final, with his team coming out on the losing side that day. Maguire barely played in his first season at the club and only played a bit-part role in the club's promotion, but it was following Marco Silva's arrival midway through Maguire's final season at the KCOM that he really kicked on and showed some fine form. As a result, he was snapped up by Leicester City for £17 million at the end of the season, in what seemed like a pretty reasonable fee at the time. The Tigers inserted a 15% sell-on fee for any profit the Foxes should make on the centre-back then, and 2 years on, he joined Manchester United for an eye-watering £18 million. That made Maguire the most expensive defender on earth, and it made Hull City a tidy £9.5 million. It's just a shame we never saw any of that money reinvested, or any of the money from Jared Bowen, or Sam Clucas, or Andy Robertson. You get the point. I'm out. Raheem Sterling, £9.8 million. Staying with current England internationals, the profit Queen's Park Rangers made on Raheem Sterling is pretty staggering when one thinks that he was just 15 years old when he left Loftus Road. Sterling was signed by Liverpool in 2010 when Rafa Benitez was still in charge of the Reds, and his £450,000 fee, which later rose to £2 million due to add-ons, made him the most expensive 15-year-old in the history of the sport. That figure would be dwarfed by one clause written into Sterling's Liverpool contract though, which stipulated that QPR would be owed 20% of Sterling's entire future fee should he leave Anfield. Of course, Sterling did leave Anfield in a deal which made him the most expensive English footballer of all time when it happened. Manchester City paid Liverpool an initial £44 million, with the potential to rise to £49 million, and it is my understanding that Man City have now paid Liverpool all £5 million in add-ons. That means QPR have pocketed a cool £9.8 million out of the deal, in addition to the £2 million that they received from Liverpool in the first place. That means Sterling was QPR's all-time highest grossing sale alongside Loic Remy up until the departure of Eberechi Eze this summer in a deal believed to be worth £17 million. Kevin De Bruyne, £10 million. In a 7 filled with unsatisfying decimalised numbers, there is something rather refreshing about the presence of a round number like £10 million for Kevin De Bruyne. Or at least there is, if you're someone like me with clearly diagnosable mental disorders who is writing a script for a video about sell-on clauses at 12:30 at night. Those of you who follow me on Twitter, also known as the hardcore HITC Sevens fans, will have seen the image I shared of this unfortunate article published in Bleacher Report just before Chelsea sold Kevin De Bruyne, which has aged rather poorly. De Bruyne never really got a look in at Chelsea, registering just 9 appearances, and some felt they had done great business getting £18 million for him when they offloaded the Belgian to Wolfsburg. Within 18 months, De Bruyne was back in the Premier League, and Wolfsburg received £55 million for his services. Once again, many thought the fee involved was wild, but they would be proved emphatically wrong. De Bruyne has been an absolute delight at the Etihad, and no one has been more impressive in the Premier League over the last 5 years than him. As part of his £55 million move to Man City, Chelsea received a £10 million sell-on fee, a pretty minor compensation for a mistake that must still give Blues fans the odd sleepless night. Luka Jovic, £16.3 million. Okay, we're not messing around now, as we enter the territory of sell-on fees that would have set world record transfer fees in isolation as recently as 1996, when Alan Shearer joined Newcastle United for a then world record fee of £15 million. Some of you may recall Luka Jovic from his time at Eintracht Frankfurt, where he scored 36 goals in 75 games before being sucked into a wormhole and never seen or heard of ever again. Not really, as if he had, wormholes would have become scientific fact rather than a speculative structure that just happens to be consistent with Einstein's general theory of relativity, but he might as well have done since Jovic did next to nothing at Real Madrid last season. Off the back of a season in which he scored 27 goals, the previously predatory Serb could only muster up a miserable 2 goals in 27 outings as Los Blancos won the La Liga title. Jovic's transfer history is a slightly unusual one. He joined Benfica from Red Star Belgrade in February 2016, but only ever made 4 appearances in the Benfica first team. He spent the 2017-18 and 2018-19 seasons on loan at Eintracht Frankfurt, who exercised their right to make the deal a permanent one in April 2019. They did so in the knowledge that they would almost certainly be selling Jovic in only a couple of months' time, having already entered talks with Real Madrid. Benfica had inserted a 30% sell-on clause into Jovic's future contract, meaning when he swiftly signed for Real Madrid in a deal worth an initial €60 million, they pocketed an additional €18 million, roughly equivalent to £16.3 million due to the woeful state of the pound these days. Antoine Griezmann, £21.8 million. We take another big step up, this time to a figure that would have set a world record transfer fee all the way up until Christian Vieri put pen to paper on a £32 million move to Inter Milan in 1999. The exorbitant fee that Barcelona paid for Antoine Griezmann is reflective of their short-sightedness in the transfer market under Josep Bartomeu, and in his debut campaign, Griezmann only scored 9 league goals at the Camp Nou, which works out at over £11 million per league goal. Still, it makes him a bit cheaper than Joe Linton, who has thus far cost Newcastle £20 million per league goal scored. Griezmann is obviously an exceptional footballer. He has proved that with Atletico Madrid and the French national team. Griezmann first signed for Atletico for £24 million in 2014, and he proceeded to score 133 goals in 257 games in the Spanish capital, twice finishing in the top 3 of Ballon d'Or voting. When a departure finally arrived, it was for an outlandish sum of money, as Barcelona forked out £107 million to make Griezmann the 4th most expensive footballer of all time. Real Sociedad smartly inserted a sizable 20% sell-on fee for Griezmann when they sold him back in 2014, meaning his enormous transfer to Barcelona pocketed the La Liga side a staggering £21.8 million, almost doubling his original sale price. Ousmane Dembele, £24.2 million. The sell-on fee to end all sell-on fees, I mean not literally, they will still exist, but certainly the biggest sell-on fee in a record that will take some beating is the amount of money that Rennes received when Ousmane Dembele signed for Barcelona. A graduate of their own youth ranks, Dembele joined Rennes at the age of 13 and he spent 6 years with the club. Only one of those years was spent in the club's first team, but 12 goals in 29 outings prompted plenty of interest. Dembele was swiftly snapped up by Borussia Dortmund for around £14 million, and he would last just a season at the Westfalenstadion as well, as Borussia Dortmund turned an £83 million profit on the young Frenchman in the space of just 12 months. Well, actually not quite, since Dembele had a hefty 25% sell-on clause, meaning that of his overall £97 million transfer fee, £24.2 million went straight to Rennes. That makes Dembele the club's record sale when one combines the fee that they received for him and the sell-on fee, although I suspect that record won't last long given the existence of Eduardo Camavinga. Dembele, meanwhile, has had a pretty nightmarish time with injuries since arriving in Catalonia, and he was limited to just 9 appearances last season. So that is it for today's video. Thank you all as ever for watching. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Give us a like if you enjoyed the video, and make sure that you are subscribed and have notifications turned on for HITC Sevens. You can also follow me on Twitter or Instagram, where the username is just at HITC Sevens on both platforms.